Hello, hello. Welcome back to Let's Talk Ray Bradbury, the show here on Let's Talk Entertainment. We're going back to 2018. I've been attempting to read and review each of the roughly 600 short stories written by the late, great Ray Bradbury. Today we're up to story number 249, which also happens to be the 10th of 22 stories in the collection We'll Always Have Paris. Today's story first appeared in this collection. It is called Arrival and Departure. The way that this whole thing works is I just do a brief synopsis of what happens in the story, sort of the plot and characters and all that, and then I just sort of wrap up with a very brief analysis of what happens, what it means to me, what I take away from it. Is it a good story that leaves me thinking about it for the rest of the day? So, Mr. and Mrs. Alexander, both in their 70s, have been homebound sick for the last 2 years, but after 24 months in their dark house surrounded by ointments and pills and baths and robes and slippers, they've suddenly realized it's a spring day, they're feeling great, and they burst out onto their front porch and they see the glorious world around them. They feel like going for a walk, so they quickly put on their shoes, go into town, and after a few minutes they split up. They start buying a new dress, a new suit, hat, scarf. He goes to the cigar store. She meets up with some ladies. They invite her to a meeting of the Thimble Club that evening, and they invite him to an open house at the cigar store for drinks and cigars later that night. And then they even make plans to go to a show afterwards, and then sometime in the week ahead, go to the lodge meetings for the various clubs. They make it to about noon, and then they head home, and as they get back into the house, their mood really changes quickly. They each begin taking off their clothes, not in a sexual way, but they're replacing them with their old robes and their old slippers, and they feel, I feel a little bit tired, I feel some aches and pains coming on, I'll take this pill, I'll soak my feet, all of that, and before you know it, they're sort of talking about skipping their plans, and then finally at last, feeling tired and sick again, they hear knocks at the door of their friends to come and get them, and they don't even remember who it was or why they came, and they sort of ignore the knocking from strangers. This story smells like my long-dead grandparents' apartment building when they were senior citizens in their last years. My grandparents on my mother's side have been gone for 25 years, so I was pretty young when they died. But they lived in a senior living facility, a little apartment, and it had all the hallmarks of an old folks' home. My grandfather died at age 91. Grandma died in her late 70s, I believe. And, they were so spread out in age compared to me that it was, he was born in 1906, to put that in perspective. Some people have 4 generations alive now. His generation remembers, the first flight of the Wright brothers. So it was a very, very different experience for me than it was for a lot of people my age, I would say, being only 42. But it very much smells like their apartment, being, filled with various pills and salves, and I think of the smell of Vicks, for example. The story, though, it's about getting old, but also getting old prematurely, getting stuck in your ways, sort of shunning the outside world, staying home more and more, going out less and less, and sort of gradually talking yourself into old age, into seclusion, and sort of awaiting the end of your life. But also at the same time, being comfortable at home. These people have been in a long marriage. They're comfortable with each other. They sit around the house for years, playing cards, enjoying their own company. Yes, feeling a little bit down, a little bit achy, a little bit complainy. But at the same time, that is their life together, and that's enough. And they don't necessarily need the stimulation of going outdoors and being around people all the time like they did when they were younger. And I'm 42, but I find this relatable in many ways. I appreciate the comfort of my own home, and I don't like to be away from it for very long. I think part of this comes from having grown up in a house that was at times very, very unfriendly when I finally left it in my 20s, but now having a place that I enjoy being, but I feel safe. I'm glad to be here, and I don't like leaving and going out of town and spending time away. And I'm very much an introverted personality. It's my personality type. The act of going out and socializing, it feels like putting on a mask. You have to act a little bit. And I find the whole process exhausting, and even here, shooting a video with you, I always attempt to be myself, but even this is a little bit of an act, because obviously you don't normally engage in the function of, sitting here talking to a camera, imagining an audience, and then knowing that there's an audience possibly watching. That sort of affects your behavior. You want to put on the best show you can for them, and for me, it's very quite exhausting. Sometimes when I turn off the camera, I sort of lean back and sigh or yawn, and it's like the release of a pressure valve, and you finally realize the balloon is empty after all that yapping and yammering to the camera for several minutes. But yeah, people say I'm quiet. They say I'm missing from the world when I used to engage with them. They say I'm secretive, but really, watch my fucking videos. Just like I did now, I usually at some point reveal things about me. My channel's here all the time for them, and a lot of them choose not to engage. So I would say, fuck you, right? Because I'm here, I'm enjoying myself in my home, where I'm safe, where I feel I belong, and at various points in my life, in my adult life, I've gone through phases where I really get outside and do things with people, and I always found it really exhausting. Running was my big thing several years ago for like a decade, and I ended up in part of a club, sort of managing that club and organizing group runs and going to races, and it was sort of a tug of war between the act of running. It releases endorphins, makes you happy, makes me better tolerant to the act of engaging with people, but at the same time it's still engaging with people, and then you're engaging them, you're planning things in your off time, you're waiting for them to present themselves for a run, for a race. And so it was always a tug of war between that exhaustion and that comfort zone. And I don't run very much anymore. I'm sort of semi out of shape. So it's a very different experience, but it's become more of a personal experience where when I do, I'm usually alone, and I don't feel that pressure that's caused by being in the company of people. But very much that is what this story is about: arrival and departure, the 10th of 22 short stories in We'll Always Have Paris from 2009, one of the last collections released in Bradbury's lifetime. No doubt there's many stories out there still yet to be published, but I'm focused right now on the 600 or so that he did publish. Someday we're going to get there. Next time we're going to be up to story number 250, which is Last Laughs, and it brings us to the halfway point in this collection, We'll Always Have Paris. I hope you have a copy, because it's pretty good. He described these stories as being sort of explosions of creativity that came to him at various points in his life. He encouraged you not to think about them too much, but that's what I do here. I think about shit too much. Thank you for thinking about it with me, and I'll see you again next time.